couple of problems with some equipment. So a little bit of a late start, but not a big deal. I think it looks like, there we go. Sounds better too. All right, so let's do some hand quizzes. Today is a play day. This isn't going to be a very long one, but we'll do 2 or 3 of them. See how we go.
Hey there, poker coaching. Tristan Way with a quiz from a $500 MTT online. So here we got under the gun coming with a min raise before the flop. And action folds to us with this lovely hand in middle position. What should we be doing here? Should we fold, should we call, or should we raise to 2,800?
This is on the line for me because it's 9-handed. I think I'm 50-50 call or fold. I don't really see the point in raising. Too many players left behind. So I'm going to go with call.
So this is...
Tristan, what are you talking about? We're 44 big blinds deep, late into a tournament, because the blinds are 225 and 450. And you're talking about 3-betting the under the gun raiser, unknown, from the hijack with Queen 10 suited. I can see the merit here in some instances, but with no information on this player, no HUD, no nothing. How is this a standard play of yours?
This is one of those tough spots where these hands,
No, it's not.
like suited broadways, play really well, but not when you're in middle position against an early position raiser with a lot of people behind you.
So you're attempting to buy the button? Valid argument.
I mean, sure, these are kind of hands you want to see flops with, but these are also hands you can play aggressively. So,
two conflicting statements there. They play well post-flop, but you also want to play them aggressively pre-flop. That's ace-king suited, sure. But when we say play well post-flop, that means that the flop, when it improves us, we will come out with the winner a lot. Meaning suited high cards, stuff like that. Hands like this, you make one pair, where are you in the hand? This hand has best played versus multiple opponents. In position, sure, but you can't get everything you ask for.
folding, I just give 0. I just don't think we want to be folding these
No,
hands
never
often.
fold.
And I think
Sometimes
in
fold.
spots are kind of the way to play it. So I think raising to 2,800
Not
here
never.
is the best option. We gave that 10.
That's the best option. And he didn't even make it close. He didn't even say, like, calling is 9 and, raising is 10. You know what I'm saying? He could say, my preference is to do this for this, and this reason. But, you know what? Calling is fine, too. He's basically saying calling here is the second worst mistake, which it's not. It's almost a tie with your best decision, which is debatable to 3-bet. 5th in the ring event last night. Nice. I don't know what the ring event is. Oh, there was an online ring event. Still, that's a nice score. You know, I know it's frustrating when you get that close. Trust me, I've had quite a few that were real big uns that I got 4th or 5th in, but that's a damn good score, though. I mean, had to have been a few grand, right?
10 points, of course, and calling 5 points. I think calling, we're just mostly hoping to hit the flop, and we're hoping people behind us don't apply pressure, and so on and so forth. So it's a little more ambitious. But I do go with a 3-bet here. We are deep enough.
Ambitious would be thinking that there's no chance the player under the gun ever has a hand he can 4-bet us with. That's ambitious.
To kind of play a little bit. And under the gun calls. So the flop comes ace-jack 5. They check. What should we do now? Should we check? Should we bet 2,000 or bet 4,000?
I feel like I'm going to disagree with Tristan on this one. And I agree with 90% of the things I see on these sites. This is a $500 buy-in, so maybe it plays different. But here's the thing. If we bet now, right, we are saying we have a good ace. That's pretty much it. We're basically capping our range. If we check, We can have sets. We can have two pairs. We can have, aces. We can have kings. We can have queens. We can have all these hands that would correctly, not queen 10, that would correctly 3-bet from our position. So my decision here is to check. And there's also a benefit of it too. We do have a gut shot, but that's a dream and a prayer. But we also do have backdoor draws with the hearts. So, there are now 13 cards that improve our hand to the point where we can then gain enough equity to either merit a steal or place doubt in our opponent's head. Plus, there's another factor. There are backdoor draws for hands we don't have. So, clubs and spades. If it comes off spade, spade, or club, club, we can probably represent those because the ace is out there of spades. We can easily have the king, queen of spades here. Easily. And is that hand going to bet this flop? If you're betting a flop because it's weak, or because you're weak, it's kind of not the best play, because what's the outcome here? You bet, and then the player calls, then hopefully he checks the turn so you can get to the river. Like, you can just check it to the river. And yeah, that can look like pot control, but I think we're risking too much, and we're telling too much about our hand in that situation. Now, if I had ace-king here, I would play it similarly, because I would feel most of the time I'm so far ahead that betting serves no purpose. What if this guy has queens under the gun? I mean, is he really going to give me anything if I bet this flop? No, but if I check the flop... So here's the thing. If I had ace-king here, and he had, let's say, queens or tens, right? And let's say the run out is, 7-9, right? Just nothing, right? If I check the flop with ace-king here, he checks the turn, and I bet the turn reasonably. He's going to take a card off with tens, queens, kings, nines, all these hands, even hands like king jack or 10 jack that can raise under the gun at some stack depths, all those are going to call. So then he calls, and then the river comes off, and it's a nothing card, and then I bet again, right? It's then reasonable for this player in flawed logic and the human condition, the way the human mind works, to say, this guy don't have an ace. I can hero call here with my queens all day long. And he's not wrong. But the truth of the matter is, if you're willing to check these flops when you really smash them, with a hand that's not a smasher, like aces, jacks, fives, those are smashers, man. We smash the flop. Nobody can have much. But when we have enough, ace-king is the conceivable nuts here. Unless we're in the random situation where somebody hit it harder. What are those hands? Jacks, ace-jack. Fives, sure, but a lot of players don't play fives under the gun. I know it's not part of the perfect GTO range. From under the gun right here with 40 big blinds, it's sixes. You're supposed to fold fives. So I really love checking a lot. All that being said, I think Tristan is going to say we're supposed to bet because he's going YOLO on this hand. But I'm going with my answer.
So this is one of those texture flops that is going to hit the under the gun 3-bet caller sometimes. And it's not always going to hit us.
Right.
And it's another one of these board textures where we could check really strong hands like top set or top pair with top kicker.
Ace-king.
I think this is a spot where we're going to mix in checks and small bets.
I'm going to mix in small bets with my checks. I'm going to be mostly checking this board texture no matter what I have in my hand. I'm more likely to bet small with a monster like pocket jacks here.
And since this is a 3-bet pot, we don't have to bet big once again. We can bet a third or a fourth of the pot. So if you picked bet 2,000, great, 8 points.
8 points for going against the best play.
If you pick check, great, 8 points. I think those are both equal.
10 points, that's a 10.
And equal plays, so forth here with this hand. And betting 4,000 is just too big of a bet. So with checking, we...
Great explanation on there. You 3-bet pre-flop, and now you want to explain why betting 4,000 is too big of a bet. Is because nobody would do that with the ace-king. You wouldn't be afraid of anything. So, good explanation.
Get to kind of realize our equity, maybe turn a heart, maybe turn the nuts with a king. And then we also have a few hands in our range we could play like this to check back. So that's why this is a cool spot to check. The turn card comes to 7 of spades, and our opponent checks again. Now, what do you think we should be doing on the turn? Should we check? Should we bet 3,500 or now bet 6,000?
It's interesting because there's quite a few plays you can make here. You can actually check back again. You can check it again because if he's opening with something under the gun, there's a slight chance that we're actually ahead. Hands like 10-9, other queens, you know what I'm saying, that are going to get counterfeited a lot. I don't really like it. If we had King 10 suited, then yeah, played this way, that'd be fine. I don't really love the 3,500 bet because we're allowing flush draws to play with us. So I think if I was playing this hand and I had gotten to this point already, I think I'm going to bet, and I think I want to bet big because I'm going to sit there and be like, ooh, like the story that I'm telling is, all right, 3-bet pre-flop with ace king. Ooh, I got one of the best flops for me. Okay, I'm going to check and just be trappy. And then the turn comes off and, oh, wait a minute, there's a flush draw now. I should bet big to get my value here. And I do believe that you make your best steals in single bluff bet pots. I think you make your best steals on the turn by betting 6,000 or by betting big. And I'm literally right now editing a video for the next Jedi Mind Tricks about betting big in different situations. And this comes up many times on the turn where you just make one big bet and just take it down. So I'm going to go ahead and bet 6,000.
All right, well, we got checked to twice, so I think now, since we just have queen high, we need to start betting.
Why? I mean, here's the thing. If this was a multi-way pot, then I would see betting smaller, but I would only bet like 22 or 24,000. 3,500 just isn't correct. Like, it either needs to be smaller or bigger. 3,500 is 55% pot. That's not enough to polarize our hand, and it's too much to look like, or to also to polarize our hand. You know what I'm saying? It's right about half pot. I hate half pot bets. Half pot bets I feel like should only be used when I want to get called. Other players use them to bluff and c-bet and all this other bullshit, and it's just ineffective. I don't believe I've folded to many half pot bets that I've ever gotten wrong in the last like year, just because it's just such a sizing that really should be done away with. If you never bet half pot playing poker, I honestly feel like you would do a lot better. Just because your bets would have defined meaning every time you made them. Now, that being said, the reason why I will bet half pot bet is because I wish to get called. I would make this bet if I was trying to get called. 3,500? I'm going to get called by all flush draws, right? Which, if you had ace king, that's the bet. You know what I'm saying? Because then it's very easy to get away from it on the river, especially if you're holding the king of spades. You know, then the player might not even lead at you with a flush, and you can just check it back. I just, this bet is wrong. This bet is wrong for the stakes I play. I can say that definitively. I think this is another one where the coach here is retroactively improving his result or his analysis versus his result. I like Tristan. Tristan has a lot of great stuff, but I feel like he puts up hands that are too specific a lot of times. Like his generalized stuff, which is really the stuff you should be studying, is very good. But this is just too specific to this situation. And we don't know enough about this player. He hasn't told us what he knows about this player. So let's just hear it.
Betting. And this is what we were hoping for. We didn't really.
This fold happened because the player had garbage. The player had like a small pair. He might have had an under pair to this board, like pocket fours. You know what I'm saying? If I had to make a guess with a gun to my head, I would say pocket sixes. Sixes or sevens, because I think eights and up takes a card because of all the blockers and bluff potential. Like if you have pocket eights here, right, and the river comes off a 9, well, now the 3-better really can't have 10-8 and, what was it, 8-6 or whatever. But you can. You could just be a wild guy under the gun. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like this one.
We want to see a bet, although we can still play our range and call.
I'm not even going to listen to this shit. Yeah, the bet's wrong. The turn bet is wrong. The turn bet worked in this instance because the player had nothing. He had like less than nothing. This is one where he might have had, I don't know, something like just a trash hand. Probably a pair, honestly, an under pair. So I'm not even going to listen to this garbage. On to the next hand.
Hello, everyone. Lexi Gavin here.
Ooh, that's
And
loud.
today we're going to go over a hand that I played at a 5-10 no limit cash game. So here we are with 10-9 of spades in the big blind.
Notice the difference when Lexi does a quiz.
The low jack, who I have labeled as an unknown player, raises to $30. The button calls. So what should we do with 10-9 of spades here? Should we fold, call, or raise to 130?
She did call him the under the gun player, which is maybe a clue. Maybe it's something you want to think about. Uh, I don't try to. I've never tried in my life to figure out women. It's kind of a hard thing to do. I just try to see the world. I try to see us the way they see us, but I'm never going to be able to figure them out. So I think this is one where calling is awesome. I think the squeeze is also good too because the button didn't 3-bet. And that means that when we squeeze, the under the gun player knows there's this range on the button that is looser, but then again could be trapping because it's in position. So I think there's a lot of merit to the squeeze. Uh, Considering the fact we have $1,000 here and everybody has pretty much the same, that's 100 big blinds. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn. I think I would go with the call here because we're out of position, and because I'd really like to see a flop with this hand. This is much like the Queen 10. It's a great reason to call because multi-way, this one plays well post-flop. So let's go ahead and call this.
So I like just calling here. This is like such a perfect big blind hand, right? Like,
Right.
don't you just die for those suited connecting hands in the big blind? You're not having to pay too much of a price, and you get to see a nice suited connected hand in a multi-way situation. These types of hands just flop really nicely as well. So here we have a flop of ace of hearts, 6 of diamonds, 4 of spades. So we check. Low jack C bets 35 into a pot of 95, and the button folds. What would you do here? Would you fold, call, or raise to 120?
I think I'm gaming the game, but I think I really like raising here because this player shouldn't have improved on this board much, which means he has one pair. We are out of the big blind, so we can have anything. We can have 8, 6, 7, 9, 5, 7, pocket 8s, pocket 6s, pocket 4s. We can have all these hands. The only problem is when he does have a pair like jacks or something, we're going to see a re-raise quite often, and we're never going to see a fold. But I think, and I've been using this in tournaments a lot, I think raising is great, although I will say this, we do have a lot of equity. So maybe this is where I kind of screwed up in cash games, I will say. We have a lot of equity with the backdoor flush draws and gut shot straight draw and 2 overs. So we kind of have a pretty strong scenario here. Okay, it's a cash game. It's a cash game. It's not a tournament. All right, the player can reach back in his pocket for more. So let's just call because our raise isn't as threatening. I think we're better off doing a check raise on the turn if we see another small bet. So I'm going to go ahead and call here. I think in a cash game, I think I like the call slightly better.
So I think this is close between a call and a raise.
See, here's the thing. It's close. Call it a raise. It's close. I was almost there.
I think you can certainly call here. You have 2 overs. You have some nice backdoor equity. You have a gut shot straight, backdoor spades. And we also connect well as the big blind with this flop. So I think this particular situation, I chose to raise to 120.
I like it.
When our opponents go small on the flop, I like to exploit that sizing.
Yeah, tournaments it's very common to go small. Cash games you're more commonly going to go big. Even over pairs, honestly, up to ace or up to kings are going to bet sizably here. They're going to bet more than they more than 1/3 pot, which is what this bet essentially is. They're going to bet 40, 45 or 50. You know what I'm saying? I think the down bet only comes in a lot of cases where the player has exactly aces or kings. But I mean, queens, jacks, tens, all those hands, they're going to bet a little bit stronger for protection in case we have something like 7-9. You know what I'm saying? They want to charge us for the draw, and we could absolutely have that. Or even ace 8. Ace 8's not going to fold, or any 8 that we have in the big blind is not going to fold here. So let's get some value now. So yeah.
by putting in a check raise. If he were to go bigger, I'd probably be more inclined to just call. But I like to go 120 to his $35 raise. He gives it a call. And the turn is the king of spades. So now what would you do? Would you check, bet 120, bet 220, or bet 300?
So the board's changed dramatically, and it's kind of great for both of us because this player is going to have a lot of kings in his range. We are not, but now we've picked up the spades and we have the gut shot. I think we want to take this one to the river. I think this is too good because let's say he has ace king or ace queen or ace king or king queen. Let's even give him credit for aces. You know what I'm saying? Let's take kings out of the mix because that's just, that makes it too complicated. But if we check raise the flop with some pair, and he now has us crushed with one pair, he is going to raise this when we bet. So, because our hand can look a lot like we just had overcards, things like that. We're defending in the blind. We could be playing a move, all those things. So, I will say this, Lexi is a far better cash game player than I am. So I don't know all the nuance, but I feel like we got 12 outs going to the river here. I feel like we're also going to get a lot of bluffing opportunities when the turn goes check, check. So when it goes check, check on the turn, I think we can lead a lot of rivers, but we can't really do that if we lead the turn. We kind of try to take the lead away from this player, but we did check raise the flop. So check raising the flop would be done with two pair. And then if the player, if a good card comes out for the other opponent's range, I think you should check it to them and let them bet. And then you can kind of lay in the weeds. It's a very complicated hand. I don't like giving up on turns. I don't think that's what we're doing. I think we just would rather see the river. If we are going to bet, I think it has to be somewhere around 220. Just because I don't think a king can raise us. One pair I don't think can raise us. I think 300 might be a little bit too big, but it's early in the morning for me, man. And like I said, Lexi's a much better cash game player. So I'm going to go with my instinct and check.
Okay, so here I think we have to continue betting. When you check raise a hand like this, you're always going to be
I kept forgetting we're check raising the flop. Sorry.
Continuation betting on boards that bring you equity. So in this situation, we've now turned a flush draw, and we are definitely going to continue
What's up,
the
Pocket?
aggression here. Now, I know a lot of people look at this king and say, "Oh, great."
Yeah, yeah, she's absolutely right. We check raise the flop and we turn to equity. I mean, this is a 3-barrel now. We're not looking to make the hand anymore. Our hand, it's not its intrinsic value that matters. It's the positional advantage and the leveling war that we can create in our opponent's head. So I absolutely screwed that up. We're supposed to bet the turn, and we're supposed to bet about 220.
This favors
I think
the
220
low jack's range here. He can have all of the strong king X combos because he raised pre-flop. And if you really think about it, he really doesn't have any king X combos that aren't like a set of kings, right?
Yeah.
Because of the fact that he called our check raise. So there's a small chance that he's calling with a hand like ace king of diamonds or hearts or something, but it's not very likely that he's going to have too many king X combos in his range.
Only
here,
two
right?
combinations of the suited
So
hands. And that's an important distinction. There's only the ace king of diamonds and ace king of hearts. It's not all combinations of kings, ace king, because you're not going to call with ace king offsuit here. You're just not. It's after getting check raised, you just know there's going to be too much heat on the turn, so you're going to toss the offsuited ones, even if you thought they might be good on the flop, just because you don't know where the fuck you're at. Ace king of diamonds, ace king of hearts can absolutely call, because if you pick up a heart, now you have two overs and the heart draw that you might need to bail you out.
So I think we definitely have to continue.
But there's only two combinations of those, so very unlikely. So the only three hands we're worried about is ace king suited and pocket kings. Even queens doesn't love this now.
Continue here. Now this is going to put pressure on him to fold a hand like pocket jacks, pocket tens, things like that, and an 8, of course, as well. So maybe a hand like 8-9 suited would now fold here. So we definitely need to continue. As for sizing, I think we need to go pretty big here, just to really get him to fold those pairs. But he winds up calling. So now the ace of diamonds has come on the river. So now the question is, what do we do? Do we check, bet 250, or go all in?
I mean, we set it up as a 3-bet. And if we had flop two pair, or better, I think we would just jam it here. Oh God, this is a bad run out though. But he shouldn't have a lot of kings. And so realistically, the only thing we're really up against now is the suited ace of spades, where it's like ace eight of spades. Well, that calls us in a snap though, because of the eight. Oh, this is a roughie. No, I think it's simpler than that. I think we jam. Checking doesn't do much for us. Obviously, we just surrender the hand, and I don't like giving up, man. I really don't. Um, but we set it up so we would jam the turn or jam the river. So we're representing, sets and better. We could have 5-7. Uh, and I like it because we have the two spades because it's far less likely that our opponent has two spades, meaning it's far less likely that he has the ace of spades, meaning he didn't make top pair. So, yeah, I'm gonna stick with it and go with it, man. This is one of those scary ones that you just have to bet. In the video I'm making now, there was one of these. That's the crescendo of the video where I went bet 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 with Jack 9 suited, very similar board texture, and we were deep in the tournament. We were like 20 left, and I had to get all the chips in to get the fold, and it worked. Yeah, let's do it.
So here, I think we need to go for the gold here. So the ace of diamonds on the river is interesting. So now, like I said, it seems like it's a scare card, or it's a scare card for us. Like it seems like
But it's not because we're most likely up against a hand like queens or jacks at this point, or a single eight, like 8-7. Let's even make it easy. 8-7 suited, of spades is absolutely check calling or bet calling our check raise on the flop, calling our turn lead, and then folding to our river jam. That's the exact kind of hand that would do that, and it could definitely be here. 8-9 of spades, all those hands. You don't even like two pair here much unless you have exactly ace eight of spades, because there's just not many combinations you're going to have that are going to be good versus this aggressive line. So, yeah, it's a simple bet, bet, bet. And I'm going to say one thing. The concept of bet, 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 I had been looking at for about, well, this is a while ago now, but at the time I'd been studying it for about 3 or 4 months, and I didn't really get the concept because Jonathan Little does it a ton, right? And it's very effective and it's very aggressive, and it's the kind of thing that should fit into my playing style, and profile as a player, but I really couldn't get a handle on it. And the smartest thing that I've done in my poker career is when I don't understand something, I don't attempt it until I understand the nuance of it. This might break your all's brain, but back in 2004, I was playing online on Paradise Poker, and I decided one day I'm not going to play Ace King ever for anything other than a race pre-flop uh, until I understand this hand more fully. And I actually took, what was it? I would open fold Ace King because I didn't understand it so intensely. And this is back when poker was much simpler. And I spent about a good 5 to 6 months studying Ace King itself, the hand and its nuance, and rewatching hands and studying and learning everything I could. And there was much less resources back then. But I would also make notes when I saw Ace King getting showed down, how the betting went and this, that, and the other. After 6 months, I don't know if I've ever folded Ace King, except in satellites, without making some really aggressive moves because I understand the dynamic and the blockers of the hand so well. So that's a trait that I have where I don't do something unless I'm fully versed. So Bet 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 was one of those for me, and I was watching Jonathan Little stuff and trying to understand how to implement it and all like that. And it was Lexi Gavin and there's another female coach on here who the other one had tournament hands, and Lexi had cash game hands like this one where it's bet bet bet, and hearing their perspective was what allowed me to bridge the gap and make the connection between all the math and high level shit that Jonathan Little was saying that's very simple, but if you don't understand the concept, you don't get it. The way that the women explained it really got it home to me, and it reminded me that I watched Jennifer Harmon and Kathy Liebert do this shit 10 years ago. I think the female brain is very fascinating when you look at it in poker because it is so rare and it does things so uniquely, but it also does them very logically. And when you see a woman's brain, which typically is based in emotion, versus a man's brain, which is based in logic. That's just science. I didn't make it up. When you see the woman's brain implement logic that it's come up with, it's really fascinating because it's damn near infallible. So it made it very plain and simple for me, and I was able to institute bet, and now I do it. It's going to happen a few times a day if I play a full tournament schedule. It's going to happen 4 or 5 times where I'm just going to bet, and it's going to work 90% of the time because I understand the perspective.
Going to have a lot of ace-x combos, but now I think he has even less ace-x combos because he called the turn, right? So in the event, I mean, unless he has a set of aces, if he turned a set of kings or a set of aces, then we lose. Like, of course we lose. But I don't think he has too many ace-x combos. Like, if he had a hand like ace-8, he'll probably call the check raise on the flop, but he's probably going to fold to another bet on the turn. I mean, he might call, but that's a stretch, right? Like, to put him on ace-8, that's like one combo. Same thing with, like, ace-6. I don't even think ace-6 or ace-4 suited would even call the check raise on the flop.
No.
So, and if he did have ace-6 or ace-4, I'm pretty sure he's going to be folding the turn. So, unless he has ace-king, which, you know, maybe he decided to call a check raise on the flop with ace-king with a backdoor flush draw or something. Other than that, I don't think...
Everything she's saying, though, is there's so few combinations of the hands. Backdoor flush draw, ace-king, there's only 2 of those. Ace-8 of spades, there's only 1 of those. Suited ace-6 of spades, there's only 1 of those. You know, these are things where there's very few combinations. Sergeant heard something. There's very few combinations of hands that are actually able to call us here. So the jam is the thing.
That he's going to have too many ace-x combos. Now, to me, it really kind of looks like he has like jacks or queens.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe 10s or 9s. I know we blocked 10s and 9s, but I think that, you know, he could have a hand like that. What I also like about bluffing the river here is we can also represent 5-7, right? We were in the big blind. We could have very easy, you know, of course we could have flatted 5-7 suited from the big blind. And I think that we're repping 5-7 the whole hand, right? Like, we check raise it on the flop, we continued on the turn. If we check the river here, then he knows that we never have 5-7. And if we check the river, then he's just gonna win. Like, if he doesn't have you know, a hand like queens and jacks would probably check back, but if for some reason he had a bricked hand like spades or something, and he decides to bluff river, then we're just going to have to fold. So if we don't bet here, I think we're just always losing. We're going to have to fold to any bet, and if he checks back a hand like pocket jacks, then we're just hating life, right? Like, we probably could get him to fold jacks here on the river. So there's 775 in the pot. I think, you know, we have 630 behind. I think that we need to bluff shove here, and so we do, and we get the fold. So that worked out perfectly, exactly what we wanted. And yep, this is just an example of, you know, narrowing your opponent's range based on the action post flop, right? So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.
This is why I do the wake up with me, man, because this is stuff that I know that my brain is, and that I do every day, that my brain is not awake for yet. So it's great to see Lexi just giving you a classic example of a check raise bet. And that is a classic thing now. I mean, it's advanced, but you can implement this pretty quickly. Almost scored it perfectly, but overthought it because it's early. Let's do another one. Who do we got?
Welcome to another review.
Oh, for God's sakes. All right, well, hopefully this will at least wake me up, because this is the bad Brad. Oh, my God. I'm just preparing myself, because the story with this coach is that I believe he was approached to do some stuff for pokercoaching.com, and because the site is so big and has so much content, I don't think Jonathan Little sees every single one of these. I think he just kind of knows the player's a good player, and he's heard him talk about some good stuff. And then he says, go out and get some material for me and, you know, put it on. And I think it's a blind spot Jonathan Little has in life, is that Jonathan Little coaches very fundamentally sound GTO poker. And you can take that from a 1-2 game at the Luxor and all the way up to a $100,000 buy-in. And fundamentally sound poker will prevail. quite often, for the most part. It's going to be the baseline. It's going to be 70% of what you do, and then all the other stuff is going to be player dependent and GTO based. So I believe what this player has done is gone out and played games lower than his actual buy-in. He's the only guy showing 1-2 on here, without the caveat of I was waiting for a 5-10 game and I ended up in a 1-2, or the 2-5 didn't have any seats, so I played a 1-2. And the reason is because there's so many new players in 1-2 that it's not really good to coach against, because there are so many random things that happen, and it's just not a good example. So there's going to be a lot of mistakes here for practical play, and he's talking about a limit that I play. So I kind of get upset. So let's see this debacle.
Riveting episode of Quizzes with Coach Brad. In today's episode, we're facing an aggro reg.
Side note, this is not another riveting episode of Quizzes with Coach Brad. This is Coach Brad submitting a quiz to Jonathan Little's amazing poker site, pokercoaching.com. Probably the most content-rich site ever created for poker learning. You arrogant fuck.
Have the queen of clubs, the jack of clubs. First two opponents fold. We go ahead and raise to 2.5x. No need to ask you what you should do there. The small blind folds, who I accidentally tagged as an aggro reg. We'll just say that I'm
Messes up the quiz, doesn't fix it.
putting traps out there for you to fall into. And now the big blind 3-bets us to $20. Now, what should you do? Should you fold? Should you call? Should you 4-bet this aggro reg to $45? Click that button.
This guy's an aggro reg. We're already heads up. There's no reason to isolate him. There's no reason to raise. Ever. It's a call.
I hope for your bankroll's sake the button that you clicked was not the fold button, because that would not be the greatest of decisions and you would have been given 0 points. 4-betting also 0 points. Queen jack suited.
Okay, we agree. He has general 1-2 knowledge. Okay.
That plays well with
This is fundamentally sound.
position here. If we 4-bet, we kind of nullify our positional advantage post-flop. Villain can shove, deny our equity. That's not a good result. So flatting is what makes the most sense. So you call. We get this flop. The 10 of hearts, the 8 of clubs, the 5 of clubs. There's $41 in the pot. We have $180 behind. Opponent bets $28. So what should you do? Should you call? Should you raise to $84? Should you uncork everything and shove all of your chips right into the middle of the felt? Choose your decision.
Okay. Versus an aggro reg, I know he's going to continue betting. We have a hand that has so much equity, but yet no showdown value. That being said, if we got the money in here versus an aggro reg, I'm taking it all day long, because he's going to have hands like 10-9, 10-4, 10-king, and we're going to have a gut shot, 2 overs, and a flush draw, and I'll take it all day long. So we are raising to 84, and if we win the pot, cool, we didn't have any showdown value. If we get raised all in, cool, we like that result. If we jam, we allow this aggro reg to correctly fold a 10 against us 100% of the time. 10-9 will not call for a $180 raise all in. You can say, I want to kill the pot here. That's what you want to do? Cool. I'd like to make money. So the move here is to raise to $84, and I think we're rarely going to see a call. We're mostly going to see a jam or a fold, which is absolutely beautiful with me. If we do see a call, the turn has a lot of bailouts for us, and he's not going to lead into us. So if the turn comes off a red deuce and he checks, we can check back and still have $96, half our stack. And then when the river comes off, he's going to bet all 10s, and we probably still get it all if we hit our hand, which I think we're calling very light. So raise to 84.
I hope the decision that you chose was to stick some more money in the pot, but not all of your money. The choice is to raise to $84, and the reasoning is that we would not be just ripping it in with our sets of 10s, with our sets of 8s, with our sets of 5s, or with our top two pair. So, if we are going to raise here, we have to raise an amount that all of our sets would raise to. Queen Jack.
When you're trying to specifically represent a set, without just considering your equity and the fact that you're playing against an aggro reg, who you don't mind getting it in against with, what is this, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18 outs? 18 outs. 18 outs versus one pair, okay? 9 clubs, 3 three nines that make the nuts, conceivably. That's 12 cards, 3 jacks, and 3 queens. You know, that's fucking 18 cards. That means 72% to win this hand if we get all the money in right now. All day long. All day long. We're not trying to represent a set to take this down. We're making a bet where he folds garbage that can beat us. You know, king 9. King 7, something like that. Where a king comes on the turn and we're still getting the money in, but now we're behind. Like, we're just trying to get rid of those. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to get ace kings to overplay, you know, things like that. So we're not trying to represent a set here.
Of clubs is an equity-driven hand. There's really nothing bad that can happen if we start by raising. If we get it all in, so be it. If villain has ace king off, some offsuit hands, maybe even some like ace deuce, ace 3 of heart type hands that we can fold out by raising here, that is a win for us as well. So it's really hard to go wrong by raising here. I do not like calling because there are some things that can go wrong with calling. So choosing to simplify the rest of the hand by raising it up. And now our opponent clicks the call button and we get this turn. So we improve to top pair. There's $209 in the pot. Our opponent has $96. They check. And now, what should we do? Should we check behind or should we shove? Click a button that you believe is the right choice.
I have zero reason to bet here. My reason for betting on the flop was to get it all in when I had no showdown value but had a lot of equity. I now have a ton of showdown equity, or showdown value and equity. So I have no problem letting a card come off. Basically now I feel like this hand is a set in this exact situation versus an aggro player. And here's the thing, if we bet the turn and he does have a hand like, I mean, fucking, you believe it or not, you'd see 10 deuce here. If we do have a hand like, but let's give him credit. Let's say he has ace 10, queen 10, king 10, 10, 10 jack is possible, but not likely. But let's take that out of the mix. Let's leveling ourselves. So let's say he has ace 10, okay? He's checking here because now if we continue betting, obviously we weren't scared of the jack, so we're not scared of the 10, bro. So we could just have queens. You know what I'm saying? We could just have sets of 8s. We could have sets of 5s. You know, we could have, whatever. You know, we could just have the monster. We could even have hands like 9-7 that check raise flops. So I think this is more of a action killer than he would believe. So when we check back, we can comfortably get all the money in on the river unless one of the very few cards that's bad for us comes out. That being an ace or a king that's not a club. There's very few of those here. Very, very few. I think the only other card that's bad for us is exactly a 10, and that would mean he would jam. But then again, this is an aggro player. We are expecting him to have something here, though. So he doesn't have to have anything to jam the river when we check. So I think we're checking here and calling 90% of rivers as long as it's not supremely bad for us. So check, call.
So here we are on the turn with your top pair. If you chose to shove, you ended up getting bupkis points. Checking gets the gold here. It's worth 10 points. Shoving is worth 0. And the reasoning is because in a 3-bet pot, when we raise the flop and our opponent calls, they're going to have a ton of overpairs. They're going to...
No, they're not. When we shove and they call, they're going to have a ton of overpairs, but that's not the scenario. You know what I'm saying? When we shove and they call, believe it or not, an aggro reg is going to have a 10 here because aggro players are not only aggro, they're also really afraid to get bluffed. So you're going to see a lot of tens here when you jam and get called by this 3-bet. Now, can he have overpairs? Sure. But you're talking about the likelihood of getting dealt an overpair in this scenario of queens, far less likely because we're holding one, or aces or kings that now got check raised on the flop and then didn't get the money in on this super draw heavy flop. Aces is probably going broke here to a set. This is how I play a set versus aces. If I have pocket eights and the guy bets at me, I'm going to raise him right on the flop and I'm going to watch him snap jam as an aggro reg, and I'm going to call. And I had this happen the last time I played live, or one of the last times I played live, where it was almost the same exact scenario, and I had middle set and it was a draw heavy board and the guy had 3-bet me pre-flop from the blind, and I called and I made middle set. He led and I raised him reasonably like that was, and then he snap jammed and I went, call, I got a set, you got aces? I literally said it all in one breath and he goes, yeah. And I said, oh, too bad, man. And, you know, it's just that's the way aces plays there from an aggro reg who can't, you know, when somebody's an aggro reg, to me that means that they do the same thing all the time for years and don't learn. They're a reg and they're aggro. He didn't say good reg. He didn't say bad reg. He said reg, which means they're not really learning or changing or progressing. They've gotten this, you know, bag of tools that has gotten them to an acceptable level of competence that they can live with. They have a winning percentage that they're happy with. You know, a lot of times these players are deluding themselves thinking they're winning players when they're not. Just because they don't lose a ton, they think they're winning. And they're like, you can't beat the rake at 1-2. Bullshit. I lived on it for 2 years. It can be done. It's very hard, but it can be done. Beating the rake is not as big a thing as it is now versus, you know, back in the day, because we have computer, you know, poker. So, you know, it's just ridiculous. So the logic is flawed here. But checking is the best move, and we agree on that. That's fine.
To be beating us for the most part, we block king queen of clubs, we block king jack of clubs, ace jack of clubs, or ace queen of clubs, king queen of clubs, and queen 10 of clubs, so we don't beat any of the likely flush draws that villain has. If they do have like ace x of clubs, then, you know, so be it. But they're going to have a lot of aces, kings, and queens once they call our flop raise here. I don't love our odds of realizing fold equity by shoving. So opting to check back here, try to realize some equity, and then get another data point on what our decision or what our opponent's decision is going to be. So we check back, we get there, we make a flush, and now our opponent shoves. And what should you do? Should you call? Should you never fold? Should you never ever fold? Or do you think that you should fold?
Why is this a coaching hand? He even gave us the option of fold, call, never fold, or never ever fold. Like, why is this? Here's the thing: he's jerking himself off. Like, this is a hand I won at 1-2. That's what this is. Everybody, look at how good I am. Why is this a question? Exactly, Big Bet Bully. Why is this a question? This is ridiculous. This is public masturbation. That's all this is. This is, I'm so cool. You fucking moron.
And 3 of your...
Oh, look! He had aces! What a fucking shock!
4 options.
An aggro reg turning his hand aces into a bluff. Aces! That's how bad this is a bad aggro reg. This isn't an aggro reg.
Just gave you 10 points. 1 option gave you 0 points, but I would like to point out that if you chose to fold anyway, then you're at negative -1 million points for the rest of my quizzes. Quite the hole that you'll have to dig yourself out of. I hope you enjoyed this quiz. This is Brad Wilson for pokercoaching.com. Thank you for playing along.
This is one where he got it right through no fault of his own. So I take no pride in this perfect score. 0. I think we're going to do one more. I was going to make that the last one, but God, I hate ending on that guy. Let's do one more, just to make me feel better. I'm definitely awake now. I'm absolutely awake. Give me somebody sensible. Give me somebody who's a genius here. Give me somebody who I like listening to. And I don't want to retake one. But where's the man? Where's the man? I take so many of the Jonathan Little quizzes. Well, screw it. Let's just find one. My favorite feature of this, I can search John and all Jonathan Little's quizzes come up. I can search any coach and all the quizzes come up. Hey, let's talk about our hand ace king. Oh, you know what? Let's make it more fun. $1,000 tournament, king queen suited. We have 13 million in chips. Blinds are 880K, 160K. We're in the hijack versus multiple opponents. This is beautiful. This you're going to see some fundamentally sound, well thought out GTO poker. Come on, Jonathan, take me home.
Here we have king, queen suited facing an under the gun open. Very, very similar to my last quiz if you go back to it where we had ace king suited. Should we fold, call, re-raise to 900,000, or go all in?
Okay. Interesting nuance. We have a ton of blinds. Players behind not really in shove stack mode. Okay, so I don't think these players really matter much. We are facing under the gun open, and we are under the gun +1, which are usually strong positions, but six-handed. So this is a final table. Okay, this is what this is. With this blinds at this level, this is a final table. So we are actually in the hijack, and this player is actually in the low jack, under the gun, low jack opening range, versus a low jack opening range. And I'm just going to show you. We're going to go right to it. I'm going to bring up the tools section here. For 80 big blinds effective, right, because he's 80 big blinds, let's go to the tools, right? We said that we're in the hijack, all right? We have 80 big blinds, because that's the effective stack. Our position is the hijack versus the action of a raise from the opponent's position, which is effectively the low jack. King queen suited is a call. We have too many blinds to 3-bet. Now, here's the interesting thing. Let's say we're under the gun +1 at a full table versus a raise from the opponent's position of under the gun. King queen suited is a 3-bet 51% of the time and a call 49% of the time. So you can see the amount of players at the table has a huge effect on what your actual position is. Calling and raising seems fine. Yeah, but here's the thing. This is 100% a call because of our stack depth and because of the missing players, because of the wider range. You know what I'm saying? Because when we 3-bet, we're less likely to be up against a great hand, and we have a great hand ourselves, 6-handed. So for me, this is a call all day long. If we were 9-handed, it's a 3-bet because we want to make sure that we have a hand that does well versus a call, which is pairs, right? And hands like that, but can easily fold versus a hand that crushes us. Aces, kings, queens, ace, king, ace, queen suited. All those hands are going to then 4-bet us. And then we can just go, oh, well, look at that. King, queen goes in the muck. How about that? You know what I'm saying? So it's a completely different scenario, 9-handed versus 6-handed. It's a call all day long, 6-handed.
Well, certainly don't go all in for a gigantic pile of chips because when you get called, you're going to be in terrible shape. So in this scenario, the question is, do you 3...
Also, I'm not trying to beat you up there, Big Bet. When you say things like calling and raising seems fine, I think that statement has become overused because it ends the discussion. I don't ever want to say calling or raising seems fine unless I've said calling in this position makes sense because of this. Raising in this position makes sense because of that. So in this instance, I prefer this. But calling and raising seems fine. That should only be the tag on the end of all your thought process. People start from there and they go, calling and raising seems fine. We have a lot of blinds. You know what I'm saying? This player's opening range is wide, so calling is fine. And raising is fine because we have a lot of big blinds and this player's opening range is wide. They say the same thing twice. So the two statements aren't equal. You know what I'm saying? I want you to clearly define them and then make your decision that calling or raising is fine. And in this exact scenario, this is 100% a call. Raising is not fine because we want to play this pot for this many blinds. We want to be flopping this hand. So raising really isn't fine in this scenario. It is if we're nine-handed, because that gives us an option to get away from a situation where we're dominated. If we just call under the gun versus a first position opener with ace king, we don't know he has ace king. Like, and that's the worst case scenario for us, right? So when it goes back to him and he's going to go, well, I'm going to four bet, man, because I'm out of position and I got ace king. I got to do something here. And he makes it, from our 10 big blinds, he makes it 25. Then we can go, oh, look at that. My man over here has ace king. That's nice. I like that you got ace king. That's a good hand to have. I like getting ace king too. Unfortunately, I have king queen. So I'm going to go ahead and deposit these in the muck and let's just move on to the next hand. Let's all be friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get more information. So I think that's why the call here is the only one that's fine.
Three bet or do you call? If you recall the last quiz I made from the same tournament when the same player opened under the gun, I said you want to be three betting your absolute best hands that can very easily put money in the pot confidently, and then you want to be three betting some junkier hands that can very easily fold.
What are the junkier hands that can very easily fold? This isn't a junkier one, right? This is not one we would very easily fold. A junkier one, Jack 9 suited, yeah, or Jack 10 suited, or a pair, or a suited ace. You know what I'm saying? Ace 5, ace 4, ace 6. Hands like that. King Jack offsuit. Junky hands that, we're making a steal. We have blockers, but if we get four bet, fuck these hands. They're easy folds, right?
If you get four bets. King Queen suited is definitely a hand that wants to see the flop. I think I actually referenced ace queen suited, ace jack suited, right? In the previous video. Those are hands that also would love to just call here, because if you three bet and get four bet, those hands become significantly weaker. Whereas if you just call in the scenario and see the flop, that's fine and good. So this is definitely a spot where you want to call. Big blind calls as well. Definitely reference.
Ideal scenario. Multi-way pot in position with a great hand. Love Little's voice. Yeah, he's great. People call him the robot and Yoda and the Lego man because of the way he talks. But I love the way he talks. It's very ba 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 ba. And for somebody with a learning disability, you have to have things laid out very clearly. So his tempo of voice really talks to me, and I love it. I could actually go to sleep listening to him talk. I have.
Reference the charts at pokercoaching.com. You will see that for the most part, these good, strong suited hands really like calling, and their offsuit counterparts are the ones that much prefer three betting essentially as a bluff, and because those hands would much prefer to get the pot heads up, whereas King Queen suited doesn't really care if you see a multi-way flop, because if you flop a flush or a straight, that's just great. A flush especially. All right, big blind calls as well. Flop comes Jack, 8, 5, 3 hearts. We have no hearts. Should we check, bet 500,000, bet 1 million, or bet 1.5 million?
I'm going to say this here. If you didn't know it right now, I'm going to go ahead and admit something right on the stream. Jonathan Little is a better player than me. So I'm going to check because this is the worst case scenario. I'm setting up a multi-street bluff later by checking here. On the turn, I'm going to bet small, and on the river, I'm going to bet big. I used this exact same example in that video that I'm currently making that should be out tomorrow. I just got to edit it down a little bit, and put together the Star Wars clips. But this is a spot where you can check in position, then it's going to go check on the turn quite often, and then you can and then you can bet something small like 300K here, which is like a blind or 2 blinds or something, or like 2.4 blinds, right? So I guess that would be like 400K-ish. Because there's multiple players in the pot, you don't have to bet as small, you can bet a little bit bigger. And then if you get called once and the river comes off safe, you just go ahead and bet. And if you hit an over, pair, you can just check it and take your showdown. So I check.
So our hand is very bad. If I had a heart, I would certainly consider betting. Because if you do bet, let's say, king, queen with the king of hearts, assuming I didn't 3-bet a pre-flop. If we did have king, queen with the queen of hearts.
Note what he said, assuming I didn't 3-bet it pre-flop. King, queen offsuit in this exact scenario. Are you 3-betting it? 66% of the time. Because it's not as great a hand as king, queen suited. This is what we're talking about, man. You would 3-bet the king, queen off. So you would either have flopped it here or not have it. MTTs are hard. I never know what the fuck I'm doing. I just play cash mostly. Well, here's the thing. Your first step to understanding tournaments is realizing that the early stages of a tournament, when you're deep, 100 big blinds plus, it's a cash game. I actually use that thinking has been very common since the since the late '90s, I guess. Well, mid '90s too. But I actually use that same thinking in reverse because I am a tournament player. I sit there and go, well, if I'm playing cash, that's like the opening stages of a tournament. So I'll just put myself in that headspace, and what would I do? Level one of a tournament here with this hand when I have 100 big blinds, because you always have 100 big blinds playing live. You know what I'm saying? And until you're getting into heads up matches where you're buying in for 200 and 300 blinds, it doesn't get much more complicated than that. So when you think about tournaments, that's the case. Now, where cash game players lose an advantage in tournaments is when the stacks get small. That's when tournament players really hold it over cash game players. But I think cash game players hold it over tournament players in the early stages of tournaments. You'll see great cash game players go far in tournaments because they build up these huge stacks in the early stages because they know how to win there. But then when they're at 40 to 30 to 20 big blinds, they don't know the nuance, so they go far and they cash often, but you don't see them winning very much. And this was a very common thing, even before people started analyzing it, except with the wild exception of Stu Unger, of course. So, yeah, the check here. Play.
Or ace queen with the queen of hearts. You don't really mind betting it and then folding it if you get raised, because if you get raised, you have to presume you're against a better made hand or a better draw. Either way, you're in bad shape. But this hand is just really bad. If we bet this and get called, we're going to have no clue what to do on all sorts of turns. And we're all...
That's the thing. Betting here doesn't gain you information. It actually takes it away. Because you could be up against anything. You know what I'm saying? You could be up against flush draws, straight draws, pairs, whatever. You gain no information by betting here. Okay, I bet. All right, I call. Now what? You know what I'm saying? If it's a rainbow board, you can kind of delineate something. But when it's monotone with a couple, ends of a straight on it, it's like there's so much that can call you. You didn't learn anything. All you did was throw money away.
Also, multi-way. It's very likely the big blind just has something decent because they're going to check their entire range. Under the gun could certainly be checking with a hand like pocket aces with the ace of hearts or ace of hearts jack, right? That's never going to fold. So this is a spot where we just don't want to put any money in the pot. We're done.
That was my aces symbol.
But we do improve. Turn is the queen of clubs. Big blind checks. Under the gun bets 850K. Should we fold, call, raise to 2.2 million, or go all in?
This is a board where you would snap, give up, and not even think about it. Fine to do in practice, but we're not in a game right now, so we can think about it all day. Oh, that turn, though. Now what do you do? Now what do you do? You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm done with this hand. I'm not even interested. Oh, it's a queen. Yeah. I love that. I mean, and I've been in that situation so many times. Here's the thing. This player is betting very large. And into multiple opponents. He's saying, I want this pot to end now. Would he do this with the ace-queen, with the ace of hearts? Would he do this with aces or kings with a heart? Would he do this with a set? No. This is deep in a tournament. Hey, thanks, Zachary. I appreciate the good luck, man. I am going to be playing today at about 3 o'clock Vegas time, maybe a little bit earlier. Looks like a really good schedule. Saturday and Sunday are big play days for me, so we're going to have a good long stream later. But we're going to get through this Wake Up With Me, and I feel pretty good now. So here's the thing. He's betting big here. I think this is one of those ones, again, I'm making a video that's coming out in the next day or two about making big bets. And a lot of them are bluffs. And there's an exact hand, and I'll let you, let's say, big bet on turn. Yeah, right here. King of hearts, queen of hearts, right? If you can't, if you can see it, right there. It's this one right at the bottom here, okay? If you can read my shitty handwriting, it says, this is my notes for making the video when I was editing it. King of hearts, queen of hearts, big bet. And it says one big bet turn, kill pot. It's when I had nothing, and I did it to make the kill attempt. I almost want to show you the clip. All right, I'm going to go off topic here, and I'm going to show you the clip. It's not off topic, but it's just an interesting example that came up for me. So let's go ahead and show it to you. King of hearts, queen of hearts, big bet, fold. Big bet turn. King of hearts. There it is.
Oh, we're in the money. Ooh, and I got a good hand. This is almost a 3-bet, except for his position is a little too early. Not a great flop. Not an awful one, but not great. Did he check that quickly? I think I'm going to bet to set up for the river play, so we'll just bet a little bigger. Make it look like we were checking something like a set, but I think the big bet works.
See, that's all I have from it. So the big bet here is a definite move, and from the pre-flop aggressor who can have all the pairs, this is exactly the move. So I think we don't fold yet. I think we want to call. I know we're vulnerable. He is betting 850K, but we have 14.7 million. It's a big bet in relation to the pot, but it's not really that bad for us. So I like the call here.
This is the classic spot where we have a very, very obvious marginal made hand. And when you have a very, very obvious marginal made hand, you really don't want to be doing a whole lot of raising.
Nope.
Because when you raise, when you get action, you're going to be in very bad shape. And when your opponents fold, well, they're usually folding out hands that are...
Right. So betting makes all the hands that you beat fold, and so raising makes all the hands that you beat fold and makes all the hands that beat you get more money out of you. So there is no reason to raise here.
In pretty bad shape against you. Now, you may think we want to raise here to protect against various flush draws, which of course, under the gun could have and the big blind could have. But if a flush card comes on the river, we can be pretty confident knowing that our hand is just not good at that point. Now, I understand the opponent could randomly be bluffing with like ace, king, no heart, and then if a heart comes, maybe they decide to bluff it and we end up folding. But I think for the most part, for this player to bet into two players, they probably have either some sort of made hand, some of which that we lose to, like ace, queen, right? Or they have some sort of heart draw. And I think the plan with calling in this scenario is to typically call most river bets on non-heart rivers. Also,
Ace king with a heart can do it.
Particularly bad, and an ace is particularly bad. So we can play pretty well on most rivers, right? Like our decision is very obvious. Also, if I do raise here and a lot of money goes in the pot, I'm really unhappy with this hand, and that's usually not a good spot to be raising. And you definitely don't want to go all in. Going all in would be a disaster, because then when you get called, you're just dead. All right, we see the river heads up. River's the 6 of diamonds. Now, under the gun, checks. Should we check? Bet 1.2 million, bet 2.2 million, or bet 3.2 million?
This is a tough one. People used to always just say, well, what's going to call me here? Can I beat what calls me here? And that's a valid argument. And if you go back to Rounders, when Mike raises all in on the river with the second boat, it's kind of obvious. And even in the commentary, I remember hearing Johnny Chan. There was a commentary with him, Phil Hellmuth, Chris Ferguson, and Chris Moneymaker. They did commentary on the Rounders DVD re-release. And at one point, Johnny Chan goes, and he was drinking, and he stopped while he was taking a sip of water. And he goes, what's going to call you here? Like right when Mike jams in with the second nuts. So that was a very common form of thinking. But poker has changed. So what do we get called by? Well, my first answer is usually we get called by a bad player. This is not a scenario where we're up against bad players. The buy-in is $1,000. We're on the final table. So that's not an option. But what calls us? Ace queen, sure. Aces kings, sure. But ace jack? Does ace jack call us with the ace of hearts? Ace jack without the ace of hearts. Because then we could just have the ace of hearts and be making a bluff. So not only do I think this is a good place to bet, I think this is a good place to bet for strong value. Because if we get raised, well, we just fold. But I think betting 2.2 million is right about perfect. I sometimes might even bet 3.2. Overbetting the pot looks more like a bluff, so we're more likely to get hero called. But I think it's fine. I don't want to bet too small because then we look like we are going for thin value. And you don't want to bet for thin value small. You want to bet for thin value big. So when you get called, it pays off. So I'm going to go for standard value, 2.2 million. And I think a jack calls us here quite often. And there are some scenarios where a player has pocket tens and calls us. So I like the bet here of 2.2. That being said, on this final table, I probably don't have the balls to do this right now. Like, I'd have to be on this buy-in level for a while before I started making these correct bets, but I do believe in theory this is correct.
Now
I didn't bet enough.
we're in a fun spot because we likely have the best hand, but if we bet and get called, how are we doing? And I think the answer is not so great. I mean, the opponent could have a hand like Queen 10 and call. Maybe Ace Jack would call. But the problem with betting in this scenario when we're in position is that there is some risk we get check raised, which would be terrible, right? Like legitimately terrible. So do we want to open ourselves up to getting check raised? When your opponents are especially bad, weak, and straightforward and just not capable of check raise bluffing the river, it becomes somewhat free to put in a value bet here because I do think there are some hands that can call us that we beat, like pocket 10s may decide to call, right? Or
Holy shit, just had to go through 10 rounds of capture images to reset my password. I guess I'm a bot. Yeah, they always give me the tough ones, like, mark all the parts that are a car, and then there'll be like 3 parts that are obviously the car, and then there's like a smidge of the wheel on the side. And you're like, is that it? And the shadow's there. Is that it?
pocket 9s, or even like Ace 8 or 8-7 randomly may decide to call a 1.2 million bet. But if your opponent's good, they will take a random Ace of Hearts hand and check raise it. Or
Yep.
a hand like 8-7 and check raise it, which would be disaster because then we have to fold this hand that's pretty good. So against weaker players who are just never bluffing the river, I like making a small value bet. But against stronger players, I think you just have to check it.
I did say these are stronger players, so that all makes sense. So a check is much more reasonable, and I guess my instinct of being a pussy, of satelliting in and being at this final table, I'm not being a pussy. I'm being smart because we're obviously up against good players at a $1,000 buy-in final table.
Back and realize that opening the action so the opponent can have the potential to raise is just very, very bad and very, very detrimental. And I don't even think this value bet's printing all that much money. Like when we bet and get called, we probably have the best hand 55 or 60% of the time, so it's not like it's a gigantically...
That's funny because I would say 60% of the time, and in small tournaments, that kind of matters a lot, but in these big tournaments where you get a big payout, it kind of doesn't matter that much. You can kind of wait for better spots because of the pay jumps. So, yeah, so he's 100% correct.
Profitable bet anyway. You also don't want to go too big in this scenario. I get the idea that we could have a lot of busted draws that would like to bet, but on the river you very often want to have 2 bet sizes, one for your nut hands and a lot of busted draws, and then a small bet size for your marginal value hands and a few bluffs. And this is right on the cusp of being a value bettable marginal made hand. And in that,
imagine having 100 big blinds at a final table. The final table video that I just posted a couple days ago, I'm not going to spoil it for you. I did very well, though. There were 2 players who had 80 big blinds when the final table came down. When I went out, they still had 80 big blinds. So I didn't win it, I'll tell you that. But it was a very fascinating final table, and I actually have the final table cut out of the run just on YouTube by itself. That video is only, it's much shorter than the 8-hour stream, so if you don't want to watch the whole stream, you can just go right to the YouTube, !YouTube, and follow me there, and you'll see it says final table on whatever that was, 9/14 or whatever. It was the last play video that I have posted there, and all the Jedi mind tricks are there, so check those out.
scenario, I typically just check it back, especially if I think my opponent's good or aggressive. I know I have no read here, but with no read, I tend to just check it back as well. Because
Yeah,
when you
that's
bet
true.
Like a small river bet, it often just screams marginal made hand. And you don't really know how your opponent's going to react when you say, hello, I have mostly marginal made hands. Some people are going to call a lot, some people are going to fold a lot, some people are going to raise a lot, and you have no way of knowing which one that is. So I typically just check it back. This time the opponent did have ace of spades, 10 of clubs. So notice if we did bet this river, they're either going to fold or they're going to raise, right? And if they raise, I would have had to fold. And if they fold, well, we didn't extract any value anyway. And I think scenarios like this are going to be quite common. And if this is what your opponent has, you really don't want to be making a river bet.
See, the difference is here is that on this turn, they have a double gutter, or technically an open ender because they can get the 9 or the king, which is a double gut. Players at the level I'm playing at don't make that turn bluff after checking the flop because they feel like they look so weak and they'd rather take their equity. So with that wrinkle involved, I think absolutely it's just a check on the river. I kind of went too close into... This is one where everything's correct, fundamentally sound until the river, and then it's buy-in and field dependent. So I said, I think I'm too much of a pussy to bet the river here on a final table of $1,000 buy-in. But it's not being a pussy. There's a reason why it's there. It's because I have an instinct to know when I should be doing that and when not. So yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, but imagine having 100 big blinds at final table. Yeah, this is how Jonathan Little gets to final tables. The guy's just a monster. He plays insanely. If you ever watch him on a live play, it's crazy. But he either gets a big stack or busts, and that's when you have an unlimited bankroll. That's what you want to do. You want to be always going for the win. I can't do that. I'm Qui-Gon broke. You know what I'm saying? So I have to play for a greater majority of cashes and more safety right now until I build my bankroll to the point where I can be, 12 tabling at once and going for it. And that's what I was doing up until I had my 1 month that was mediocre. I hate trying to troubleshoot hands not getting tracked by my poker tracker. Any advice? Yeah. I played on WSOP.com for a large portion, a few years ago because I wasn't as comfortable playing tournaments for my main living. So I was playing a ton of cash games, and I love them on WSOP.com. And I would go into that, and you did get the hand replayer, so you could go through the details. So what I would do is I would have the hand replayer up, because once you close the site, you couldn't go back. So I would have the hand replayer up, and then afterwards, I had a notebook where I would write down my hand, the board, the opponent's hand, and then write down all the action, and then I would analyze it on this one big long page, and when I felt like I had it down, I would put a star on it. And then I could go back and study this for reference. And I would, over the next 4 or 5 days, I would just wake up, and instead of doing something like this, I would read those pages and go, okay, well, this is this, blah, blah, blah. And by the 3rd or 4th day, I would realize I had it memorized. And then I would just tear the page out and throw it away. I would just tear the page out and throw it away because I had understood the spot. And that's the thing. We're talking about a review hand. We're not, and I have to write things down manually. Big bet, because I am dyslexic, and it's how my brain learns is by making the thinking to word translation, and I actually have to write things down and then read them aloud so that my brain can recomprehend it. So it's interesting, but it actually is a very effective study tool, and I'll still do it on some spots. I have these little notepads around, and I'll have these in my pocket and a pen in my bag all the time. And if a spot jumps into my head while I'm out running errands or whatever, I'll write it down and then think about it and then go back to it later that night when I pull my thing out of my back pocket. I'll go back and I'll make the full notes and I'll go, oh, okay, well, that's a good nuance there. And then I can be at the computer and use all my tools and pre-flop ranges and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So it does have a lot of merit to it. It is very archaic when you don't have a poker tracker, but you have all the pieces in your head to analyze. And you can put things in, things like Flopzilla, you know what I'm saying? Or, Equilab. You can put the hands in and analyze them later as long as you remember all the details. And I think that's the most important part. It's a big distinction with players when you ask them, when you go, oh, you busted out of the tournament? How'd you do? And a bad player will go, well, there was this guy who raises under the gun. And in a previous hand, he had a hand 10-4 offsuit. And he had done this then. So I decided to three... That's an idiot. That's somebody who is basing their opinion of another player on one hand. You know what I'm saying? So they're letting that color them. Yes, you can keep that in the 1% back of your brain, but it doesn't matter. Under the gun, they raised. What's your range look like here? What's his range look like here? Don't color the range too much. Use GTO. Maybe give it a little bit looser because of that other bullshit hand. But then move on from there. And how do you go through it? And how do you understand the ranges? And how do you do all this? And you do this millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of times until eventually you can then recall hands that you played months ago and realize you're in that same spot again. And then use the knowledge that you gained by analyzing that spot to then progress correctly. That's how you get better at poker. I'm dysgraphic. Dysgraphic? Is that a thing? Dysgraphic. Is that an autocorrect? I never heard of dysgraphic. What is that? That's interesting. Are you making a joke, or is that an actual thing? Inability to write coherently as a symptom of brain disease or damage. Oh, you were in a car accident, right? You told me, yeah. Patterns of quiet dysgraphia are being are begin to be identified. Oh, that's interesting. See, you see my dyslexia caught up with me there. Uh, Interesting, fascinating. See, now this is the way my brain works now. Is I see a word like that, and because of feeling stupid my whole life from having the dyslexia undiagnosed, uh, I have to learn things about things I don't understand. So my next half hour is kind of probably going to be learning about your condition. So thanks for that. But yeah, speaking of disabilities, I'm going to host you guys with somebody who has a disability who has made it into an amazing ability. She has made her life better because of it. And I think if you asked her, she would tell you that her life is markedly better because of her condition that she has a great sense of humor about. I'll be back at about 3 o'clock my time, so about an hour and a half to play. And I'll see you guys for a good long stream and hopefully a final table. I'll see you guys tonight, man. Have a good one till then.